Welcome to another video. Today we're going to be changing the front disc on the Himalayan and the front tyre for the Motoz Dualventure. Now we're changing the disc because this one seems slightly warped. It was picked up on the MOT and you can also feel it nodding when you come to a stop. So hopefully a brand new genuine parts disc will fix that problem. Right, no messing about, let's just get straight into it with the 24mm socket. Release the pinch bolt on the other side with the 6mm Allen key or hex key. Once that's released, we can chap that out and we can help it on its way with the 16mm spanner. Once that's removed, the wheel just comes out like that. One spacer in that side and the speedo drive on the other side. We'll get the tyre changed over first whilst it's still got the old disc on, just in case we damage anything on the disc. At least we're going to be replacing that with a new one anyway. So the first thing to do, release the air from the tyre. Still haven't found or bought another valve core removal tool, but the screwdriver seemed to work last time. We'll use it again. Again, bead breaker not necessary. This just popped off the bead, no problem, by hand. I'm going to loop this up and get this off. Flip the tyre over, do the same on the other side. That's the bead off both sides, as we can see, like that. Now we have the tyre off the rim completely. Next, we will put the inner tube inside the new tyre. Easier said than done. Right, that's the inner tube inside the tyre now. I'll just check to make sure I've not twisted anything, but that seems pretty good with the valve just in there like that. Next step, get this assembly onto the rim. This time we're going to try and use the tie wrap method. I'm not sure how well it will work, but I'm going to give it a try. We'll put several of these on. So that's just got some tie wraps on the tyre now. You can see that it can go in either direction on the front, so it doesn't really make much difference. So I'll just get it on and then maybe in a couple of thousand miles we'll take it off and spin it round. We need to get the valve in there first, just to make sure. And then we'll get this nut on there. Cup of tea. So we have the valve poking through now in the right place and a couple of threads just on that nut. Now we'll start to push this tyre onto the rim, he says. What is the method? Why do we need tie wraps? What do the tie wraps do? What do the tie wraps do? That is my question. So at this moment in time, I'm struggling to see how the tie wraps are actually going to help me. But I'll keep them on there for now. Yeah, I don't see the point of the tie wraps. I'm going to take them off. Okay, rightly or wrongly, I've done away with the tie wraps or zip ties, and I'm going to just try the conventional way. Okay, and we're on. So we use the compressor now to pump this up to 30 psi and get the tyre seated on the bead. That's it at 27 psi now, so we'll class that as good. Right, now it's time to move on to removing the disc. So with a 13mm socket, we shall just remove each one of these. So these obviously have thread locker on them from the factory, hence why they're quite tight to get out all the way out. Okay, that's all the bolts out. This ABS ring we will need to reuse, so we'll put that to one side and we'll reuse that. So this is the disc that can now come off, and then we'll replace it with the new Royal Enfield genuine disc. This is the new genuine Royal Enfield disc. You see it does have an arrow on there, but it's plain silver on one side and has the black on the other side. So as long as you fit it with the black side out, then it will be in the right direction. And then we refit the ABS ring. And then we can put the bolts back in and we'll add some thread locker on as we go. Now we just have to tighten all these up. Just do them loosely at first. Using a crisscross pattern probably doesn't matter too much because it's a flat machine surface, but it can't do any harm. So I'm just going to do them all finger tight first, and then we'll torque them up. That's them all just nipped up now, so now we'll torque them up to the correct spec. Now these don't actually need to be as tight as you would think. They only go to 25 Newton meters. So we'll set the torque wrench to 25, and then we shall tighten them up one at a time, going in a star pattern. Which is nowhere near as tight as you would think. That's not very tight at all, but it probably doesn't need to be. I know we all think, well, brakes are very important, but that doesn't mean they need to be over tightened. There is 6 bolts there, and the load is in that direction, not in this direction. So I'm sure that's more than adequate. Now we'll clean up the disc with some brake cleaner and get it reinstalled back on the bike. Wheel spacer back in, slide the wheel back through there. Now we need to remember to fit the speedo drive. Obviously the wheel spacer is going to fall out. Of course it was. So the speedo drive has those 2 tabs inside there, and they must line up with the slots on there. So as long as I'm in the middle of those like that, and then this cutout needs to fit on this tab here. Making sure your wheel spacer doesn't fall out on the brake disc side. We need to lift things up and into position like that, and then get the wheel spindle back through there. Now the wheel spindle's all the way through, we can put the nut back on. You can use a 16mm spanner on the other side to just make sure that the spindle doesn't spin, and then we can tighten that up to the correct torque using the torque wrench. Now it's off the stand and nipped up, we can torque this to 70 Newton meters with the torque wrench I don't have at the moment, and the pinch bolt goes to 25 Newton meters with a 6mm hex socket. Well, that's the bike now, adventure ready, as I would call it. We now have the new front disc on, and we have the Motoz RALS rear tyre and the Dualventure front tyre. So thanks very much for watching this video. I hope that was some use for you, watching me change that front tyre for the first time ever and changing the front disc. If you'd like to see more content like that, please consider liking and subscribing, and thanks very much again. Bye bye.